You're recording.
Is it Danet?
This is what we're running around.
Yeah.
It's recording, you guys.
Okay. So last night, what was last night's date?
The 30th
The
of
30th of March.
2014.
2014.
9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
2K14.
9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time was the finale of the season 4 Walking Dead season.
Entitled A.
I
Just
still
A.
don't know the significance. What was the significance of the title?
A.
I asked people last night.
Oh, the train car at AR.
Oh, there we go. That's our first big discovery.
Yeah.
Everybody probably already knew that.
Whoops.
Anyway.
I'm just gonna stop recording.
Clap, clap, clap.
Anyway, what did you think about the finale first of all? Because Patrick's got to get his venting out.
I felt like for a season finale, it was very unsatisfying.
It was very slow for a season finale.
Like, I mean, it was slow because I watched it on Amazon, so
But I mean, like
watch
compared to
it.
the other ones, it was
Like, it
kind
felt
of
like
slow.
I think it was shorter too. Most episodes was like 40-something minutes without commercials. This was like 32.
It was the same one.
It might have more
What was
commercials
it,
in
9
too.
and 10?
With more commercials and stuff too. Like on Amazon, the most episodes like 42 minutes in length, and this one was like 32. It was like a whole 10 minutes short.
I watched this commercial stuff. I don't know, but
I'm that lazy person to just watch the night of, watch the next day.
But I felt like it was pretty quiet, minus like 1 or 2 scenes. It was a pretty quiet episode.
Nobody
which
significant
I
died.
liked. Yeah, nobody significant died except Joe. But nobody likes Joe anyway.
Who's Joe?
What?
Who's
That-
Joe?
The
Oh.
guy that Rick ripped out his.
Oh yeah. Speaking of which, Rick character development.
Yeah, I like Rick now.
It was really great because now you're starting to see this side of Rick that really you hadn't seen before, of this undesirable, like this uncontrollable anger that comes when you start threatening his kid, and it's great.
I liked how they set up the episode. They did like flashbacks, and they interspersed them throughout the episode. And at first I was like, okay, what's going to be the point of this besides, hey, Herschel, remember that guy that you loved that died? But it was really cool because once Herschel brought up like the pigs that they were going to start farming, the feral pigs in the forest, I was like, okay, that's the point. It's showing Rick at his most domestic and showing him at his most feral, and sort of contrasting that and saying, you know, this is where he was, and now look at him now.
Wouldn't the pigs also be a symbol of like them trying to domesticate themselves again?
Mm-hmm.
So like
And
this
that's
one
what-
was pretty symbol intensive.
There were a lot of like symbolic stuff.
Symbolic
too,
stuff.
yeah.
Like most important, like the biggest symbol that they really threw in there was the noose at the beginning of the episode that they showed in the preview of the week prior. And the noose, Rick was talking to Carl Michonne about how there's a track, and any animal that walks down this track get caught in the noose, and it's just a trap.
Really? Gets caught in a noose?
I'm gonna flip this thing.
That's news
Erika's
to
turning the
me.
camera.
That's news to me. Yeah, Patrick's gonna go.
Keep going. I know where you're going. Keep going. 'Cause I
And,
like that part of the episode.
It served as this giant symbol. Like this is what Terminus is. It's this giant trap, and they put Terminus at the center of the railroad tracks. So anybody walking the tracks is going to hit Terminus eventually if they're walking in that
Yeah,
general
they talked
direction.
about that too, how there were people that came from all over. They were going to the north, they were going to the coast, and they all ended up in Terminus.
Also, like random side note, I really loved how Rick is in tune with the other group. Like the minute he saw a glimmer of a chain, he didn't even know if it was the right chain. He's like, "That's Herschel/Glenn's watch. That's Maggie's poncho."
Mm-hmm. He
So
put
it's
it
like
together.
he put it together, and it shows you how well he really knows this group of is basically his family, and also the mention of like that Rick talked to Dale. Like you're my brother.
So we're going to talk about that scene because Danette likes that scene very much because that is the scene that part of the scene that made her like Rick Grimes, because she didn't like Rick Grimes at all before, but
I like Rick Grimes.
I really was like sort of like, okay, he's a cool guy at the beginning, like in season 1, and then he's kind of started turning into a sort of jerk, and I didn't like him at all, and then I was sort of neutral and sort of disliked him still, and then this episode was like, as soon as he sort of did that whole fighting scene with Joe and the others to protect Carl and Daryl and Michonne,
Patrick.
I started like really liking what he was doing and sort of getting protective of him in that moment because I didn't want him to die at all because he was sort of being a really good guy in that moment. And then he really, they went into the relationship with Daryl and Rick, which I love when they do that because they've hinted at their dynamic before, and I like the idea of it, but they never really went too in depth with it. There were like a few scenes, but nothing like the scene where he's like, you know, he's comforting Daryl because Daryl, of course, is sort of blaming himself for stuff that's happened, and Rick was just like, hey, you know, it's not your fault, and you're my brother. And that was the sort of return from when he told Rick that he was his family when he went off to get Merle.
It also, I lost my train of thought. Hold on. My train of thought. Train tracks. Yeah. I'm really glad they're really developing Rick more, because before this episode aired, Danet and I were talking about how Rick has kind of hit like a plateau in his character development. Like in the comic books, like he loses his arm, so he has to basically, his strengths that he had before are completely lost. So he has to like be be strong in a different way. But in the show, Kirkman didn't do that. He actually said it was like one of his biggest mistakes, and he avoided doing that. And so Rick's character development was a little skewed compared to the comics. But now we're starting to see that different, darker, feral side of Rick, and it's really great. And Andrew Lincoln does a really great job of portraying it. I love this. I love the scene when Rick just finally, you could see it in like they started muting the audio. So it's like Rick is in his own private world, and he just like see the moment when he's like, no, I'm done. And it's actually, the scene is basically a mirror from the comic books. I'm trying to remember who was in the scene in the comic books. I think Abraham was there, wasn't he? It was when Rick was going back to Atlanta to go to they're on their way to Alexandria, but they're going to Atlanta real quick to go to the police station to get more guns.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And they stop in the night, these hunters come up, because we've been speculating, like, okay, who are these guys that Daryl is with? But now we know it's these guys that are rapists.
They're all dead.
Pigs. And they got what was coming to them. And I think it's really great because you see the dynamics of these characters and how they work with each other. There's not even a word said between them during that entire scene, and they just are coordinated enough that they know, okay, when Rick does this, Daryl will do this, Michonne will do this, and Carl will do this. They work together as a unit and a family. Mm-hmm. And I think they're emphasizing that a lot in this season with the whole we're a family now. Because you see like the brother-sister relationship between Carl and Michonne I really love. And like Rick's kind of like the father figure of it, and Daryl now too. Like in season, I think 3 was it, Daryl and Carl got really close. I don't remember like when it was, but I don't remember exactly. Yeah, they emphasize a lot on that relationship too. He is, and it's really great. But I do overall think it was pretty unsatisfying. I mean, especially when you come from a mid-season finale like the one.
The ending was sort of like, I thought it was going to be quiet, mostly quiet, and then they were going to do like a big, huge thing at the end. So
like they always do. That's their typical.
But it was sort of like, okay, yeah, I get you're determined now, but you know.
I'm curious to see where it's going to go next, because I mean we obviously know, okay, they're going to have to get out, because
I'm curious to see when they're going to bring Bess back.
Here we go.
I mean, just like you said, they're emphasizing the family ties, and they are like in the figurative family ties to people, but they're sort of like leaving out Beth and Maggie, because I mean you would think that they would really like start to show a really close relationship with them, because they both just watched their father die, like get his head hacked off, and then they got completely separated, and they had no idea where anybody is. But Maggie has not had a single line where she even like hinted at, hey, you know, where's my mentally and emotionally unstable baby sister? But I have no idea where she is in a zombie apocalypse that's infested with rapists and murderers.
Yeah, I was pretty concerned about that too.
And they don't mention Daryl mentioned her.
Yeah, Daryl did, because he's like, she's just gone now, and she's just gone. But I am really glad they kind of addressed the thought that was going on in my mind in the entire like Terminus arc, because my whole thing was like, why are they so willing to trust these people if they just walked away from Woodbury? And Michonne's like, yeah, well, this is basically just like Woodbury. Like she says that in the show, and I think it's like, okay, yeah. So not everybody's going into this blind, and they took a really great approach with it, like climbing over the fence.
Which, like, that whole thing is sort of like reflective of how Beth is as a character, because Beth is a character now where it's very much, she knows she's in a crappy world. She knows like none of this stuff, like these hopes and dreams she has, are really going to come true, but she still has that hope that something's going to be better. And that's really reflective of how they were, where they kept going to Terminus, even though they're like, we had Woodbury and we had all this stuff that just turned out bad, but they still have to have hope, and it's very similar to how Beth moves about life now.
I'm really curious to see what actually has happened to Beth. I mean, we speculate a lot. We've always have with the show because we both read the comics, except for like the most recent ones, and we have a general idea of where the story's going. Because like in theory, they're going to Alexandria next, towards Washington, because that's the whole Abraham and Eugene story arc. And I really love Abraham, by the way, in case you didn't know.
He's nice hair. I like his hair.
He's a ginger.
They didn't have any color in the comics, but I like it in the show. It's very ginger.
Yeah, I didn't really picture him as a ginger either, but it worked. It works.
I like him.
But I know where it's going next, but there are only a couple things I can guess as to what happened to Beth, and one of them is not a happy option.
None of them are happy options. I mean, I thought, for a while, I thought it might have been Gabriel, the character Gabriel in the comics, who's
the preacher.
And everything. I was
Yeah.
like, maybe he'd saved her, but then I like started looking at that scene where I'm like, there's really like no reason for him to be, because she wouldn't have left Daryl. She didn't want to leave him in the house to begin with, but she went anyway because he told her to. And then it's not like he would have been like, there's too many walkers around you, let's get in, because by the time Daryl got out there, there were no dead walkers that had been killed. There was just one walker that he killed. So there wasn't like it was the desperation, because Beth knows how to handle herself against one walker.
Maybe she heard there was a dog.
She's gonna leave Daryl for a dog.
Dog was driving the car.
Fluffy, fluffy dog.
But I have no idea, because I think Terminus are the cannibals, and now the other bad people, the claimers, are dead. And I don't know who took her. I don't know.
At first I thought it was I was assuming hunters as well, people that have read the comics will remember there are these people that will pull people away from the group. Like the group was camping out one night and Dale went to go use the bathroom, and they grabbed him and they ate him, like piece by piece. They cut off his leg and he lost both of his legs, poor dude. And they ate him.
His reactions are great right now.
And it was really tragic.
Yeah.
And it was also a really great thing. It's like, I was already bitten. Suck it, suckers. But I never really thought about Gabriel.
I thought, because I wanted to hope that somebody nice took Beth, but then I was like, no, nobody nice took Beth.
I want to know if they're going to bring back Morgan. Because in the comic books, he comes back.
I think in the show, they've spent his story.
I mean, yeah, in the story, they definitely went like, okay, here he is, and he's perfectly content here. I mean, in the comics, he played a bigger role. I mean, he was a love interest with Michonne for a while, too, until stuff hit the fan. Yeah, they haven't played on that either, which I'm curious.
Where's Tyrese? I'm worried about Tyrese, too. Not as much
Tyrese,
as
Carol,
Beth, but I'm worried about Tyrese. Carol, I'm just sort of...
I'm indifferent towards Carol. I mean, she's starting to gain respect in my book again.
Hate us now.
I mean, Carol does what she what she had to do. I'm not saying I don't like Carol. I'm indifferent. I don't have a strong emotional tie to her as I do with like Tyrese or.
Like if she dies, I'm just gonna be like, okay, well that kind of sucks. But then if Tyrese dies, I'm gonna be like, no, that's a no.
No, I mean.
If Beth dies, we're not gonna.
They've diverged on Tyrese's story arc too, because in theory he would be dead right now in the comics, but he's not. So we're going in blind on like where Tyrese goes from here.
But to wrap things up, I watched The Talking Dead afterwards.
I did not.
And they had one of the producers on, Scott something.
One of the new guys.
Gimple, I think.
One of the new guys.
And he was talking because Chris Hardwick, the host, asked him, specifically, where are there any like Tyrese or Carol or Beth in one of those cars? And he sort of like gave a really vague answer where he was like, the next season is going to be like reinvented. It's going to be a really new show. And I was like, he kind of avoided the question, but he said it was like going to be completely different than the show's been before. So what do you think they're going to do with the next season?
I'm curious to see what the heck they're doing in the train car.
Yeah, I want to know.
It's like, okay, get in that train car. And it's like, I'm assuming like, are they just going to like push the train car out or?
That's what I thought, because I thought I was going to end with them like
rolling
it away. I was like, I don't know why they're in the train car. I mean, there's other people, because there was before, when you watch the episode, you can hear somebody screaming for help, but they kept running because they were shooting at their feet.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
So there's other people, but I don't know what the heck they're doing, or like, they're probably eating them, but.
I don't know if it's cannibals.
That's the only option I can think of. I mean,
I think it's interesting that they put Glenn and all of them in the train car too, because they're pretty accepting of people.
Don't poke holes in the coincidence. Don't poke holes in the coincidence. They also might have realized that they were close to them because they realized by the gear that they had them. So they probably were like, okay, push them towards this car.
Yeah, but I mean, like, no, I was like before them, like, I mean, my understanding was the train car was for people who didn't trust, and I mean, I can understand that thing. I mean, like, especially with Abraham and them. Abraham seems like pretty, I'm not going to trust anybody kind of guy. But I mean,
what I think is like it's a sort of. I think Andrew Lincoln calls them termites, so I'm going to call them termites, the people in Terminus. And I think what's up with them is that they're sort of like a group that was like Rick, where they're like, oh yeah, we're going to build a community like they did with the prison, and they're like, we'll let people in because, you know, we want to be good people to them. But then somebody must have betrayed them or something, and they thought, you know, that's it. Everybody that comes here, that's it. We're not trusting them. We're trapping them. We're going to do something with them, but we're not trusting them.
Oh yeah, that's where I can see like the cannibals thing, because they broadcast continuously, so that means they must get at least some amount of foot traffic. But I don't know. I really have no clue where they're going from here. Because I mean, my understanding is that they're going to like get out of the train car and try to fight. But they're here and their guns are here. The other guns are in the woods, like out there. And it's like, I don't know.
So who's flying the plane?
Who's flying the plane? I have no idea. The writers, and I'm scared.
I mean, I have definitely gained more respect for the writers again, because they kind of lost it a little bit with like season 2, 3, but they definitely got better in season 4.
There was like early in season 4 where I just got uninterested in it. It was just like I was like, there's not really anything big here. But then I like before we did our episode where we talked about The Walking Dead on this channel, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get all caught up. And when I got all caught up, it was like, holy crap, you're doing great.
They did much. They're handling the season really. They handled the season really well.
I think it was because everybody was in that prison for so long together that it just got boring. It just got boring because the characters interacted with who they like wanted to interact with. It was very cliquey, and it was just boring. But then they split them up, and it got dynamic and it got interesting.
Yeah, because the people that they were with weren't people that they normally would really interact with, and they really built off of each other, and it was really great. As to kind of go back to the question of like where they go from here, I mean, I'm curious to see how they're going to get out of Terminus alive, preferably.
Burn it down.
I mean, the last lines of the episode like were really great. It's a great ending point. I just overall was very it didn't really grab me like most season finales do. Like the mid-season finale was like, oh my god. Like, so when you have that such a big high for season finales, and then you go to like this, which was anticlimactic, it was mostly exposition.
Well.
It was exposition mostly, and getting the group back together sans like 3 of them. So, I mean, I'm unsure, and I really want them to get Tyrese back, because I'm curious to see the interactions between Carol and the group again. Especially with Rick, because Rick's going to be like, you're crazy, I'm not going to trust you, I don't trust you, you're probably going to endanger Carl, which will make him go crazy again.
They do a really good job with Carl. Like, he's annoying in the comic books, but in the show, they go, like in the comic books, he's very much like, I'm going to do what I got to do, and in the show, he seems like, I'm going to do what I got to do, but I'm conflicted about it. I'm very openly conflicted about it. They're doing a really good job with that.
Carl is much, much better in the show. He's more dynamic. He has that internal conflict that they basically ignore in the comics. I mean, in the comics, he's this very cold, ruthless, I'm doing this because I have to kind of person. Like what Rick was, and kind of is turning into a little bit. But Carl's very unemotional in the comic book, especially when you get to Alexandria. But in the show, he's very dynamic, and it's really great because it's really good to see the development of Carl from season 1 to season 4. Because it's like, okay, Carl, stay in the house up until like, oh my god.
And Rick is trusting him more.
Oh yeah,
he's trusting him a lot more, which is good.
And I really love the interactions between Carl and Michonne. Just a side note that like, it's really great because it's like. There's humanity there. They're human still, and it's beautiful.
Hopefully they all stay humans for a while, but
Rick is kind of.
Yeah, like Rick grabs at all costs. Anyway, I think that's all. We're good now. So tell us what you thought about the finale, what you expect from the next season, all that sort of fun stuff, and subscribe.